Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Please let us know where you're joining us from. And today I am super excited because I have a very special guest, Andreas Hope from dbWatch on the Ravit Show. Andreas is the director and sales of marketing at dbWatch. A little about Andreas. He's an experienced writer and tuning Sybase drivers at North Data and spent a long phase in Unix kernel. He's also contributed uh, towards R&D of operating systems in various countries like USA, Norway, etc. He has spent many years in global sales and marketing in software and services and has done business in over 40 countries. Currently, he works for dbWatch, where he preaches the gospel of structured, efficient, professional database operations based on the best practices that he learned from many of his larger enterprise customers. I am super excited to host him today. But before getting Andres up here, I just wanted to let everyone that you have a chance to win $100 Amazon voucher. What you need to do is just download the dbWatch Control Center evaluation using the link that I've shared on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. The link where you are watching it, there's detail where you can find the link to download. Also, what you need to do is quickly type hashtag dbWatch. Okay, all right. This is what you need to type in the chat, dbWatch. If you can see it on my screen, not yet. I don't think so. All right, let me quickly share it with you guys. Okay, very quickly sharing it now. I hope yes. So this is what you need to do. dbWatch, hashtag dbWatch in the chat, and you will enter the raffle. Also, like I mentioned, just go up there in the link and download, and you have a chance to win $100 Amazon voucher. All right, I am super excited because we'll be talking to Andreas Hope a lot around his journey, database server, data resources, SQL, and much more. So, without any further ado, let's have Andreas here. Hey, Andreas, welcome to the Ravit Show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be on your show today.
Thank you very much for your time today. It's an honor to have you on here, and I'm super excited to learn more about your journey, about database server, about dbWatch. But for our audience, we would love to start with your introduction.
Well, thank you. You already given me a short run of my bio. There's not that much to add. I've been working in this industry since 1978, so I'm been here from CISM and B-tree files to probably one of the first academic courses in SQL. My university was very early out with a lot of technology. All the way through today, where we don't think about single database servers, but tens and hundreds and thousands of them. Just like to add that privately, I'm still a bit sort of in the IoT phase, and I do a lot of IoT sensors around a house and work and building flows to get it all through from MQTT, Node-RED into InfluxDB and Grafana, and just analyzing my environment.
Wow.
And it led me to, amongst other things, realize that I really, really need to open my windows and let some fresh air in from time to time, because the quality of the air really, really goes bad sometimes.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's my little private data flows.
It's
Yes.
fantastic. Thanks for that
Yeah.
introduction and the detailed stuff that you've explained, Andreas. Also, since we are in 2022 now, so Happy New Year, everyone. Happy New Year, Andreas.
Thank
Just
you.
wanted to obviously learn more about what do you think is new for the data science folks in the year 2022. What are your thoughts?
If you look on the broader side of things, I think we are just I think we're just in the beginning phase of really pulling data from everywhere.
Hmm.
We've been talking about IoT for a long time, but we're still early days in deploying IoT everywhere and collecting data. And I think everything starts with collecting the data. Once we have it, we can start figuring out what to do with it. And to be honest, I don't think we know we should collect it, even if we don't know what to do with it. What's the point of it? Because in the future, we will probably discover that we do have a need for what we thought were non-essential information today. It will at some point in the future have value. And as long as we can collect it and store it in a cost-effective way, let's do it. It is amazing what we can use data for later on. Maybe I should share just one of many stories that I've collected over the years. Is here I'm from Oslo in Norway, and we have a lot of fish farms out in the sea. It's full of them. We sell tons and tons and zillions of tons of salmon everywhere. But every now and then, these fish escape their sea farms. Suddenly, like 50,000 or 250,000 of them decide to leave, and they breach the net, escape. And people want to figure out why, what's causing this. Suddenly everything wants to leave. And we have some big analytical firms here in Norway that has a lot of things to do, everything to do with ocean and sea and marine life and so on. And they were given the task of trying to see if they could figure out, is there an environmental reason for this? And these fish farms are deep into the fjords, long fjords, far from the open sea. But this company because they're dealing with all aspects of marine life, they also had a lot of databases with all kinds of information. And they just did a broad-based search of everything to see if they could find a correlation with anything for this. And lo and behold, they discovered that they had one of the databases they had was shipping traffic out in the open sea. And they discovered that 50 or 100 kilometers from the sea farm, the escape of salmon correlated with the passing of certain kind of really big vessels in the open ocean. And they haven't figured out exactly what is the sound or the noise they make, but there are certain noises that makes the salmon go crazy, and then they escape. And this is just an example that fish farm and probably super tankers or something leaving the ocean. There is a correlation with what's happening, something that's not obvious. I mean, it's so far apart that you think, 50, 100 kilometers, that's far for sound to travel. But there was a correlation. And this is just one example that the world is full of data, and we may not know today when it's going to be useful. So as long as you have the space for it and it doesn't cost you too much, just keep it. You never know when it becomes useful.
Very true. I think in terms, very true, Andreas.
Yeah. So I think we should just keep aggregating data. We should collect data and just find efficient ways of storing it. The other thing that's happening, of course, is that we are seeing much more focus on the ethics of data and data analytics and algorithms. There is much more scrutiny on privacy, and that's just going to be stronger and stronger. But I still think it's very early days in the analytical side and AI and machine learning and all these things. We're just beginning to utilize data on a big scale. And we're going to need many more years before we really get this right and can deploy it everywhere. So it's really exciting what's happening, but I think it's very just in the beginning.
Oh, I 100% agree. It's just very soon. It's very early where we are actually utilizing and leveraging the data for various technologies. And there's like you mentioned, it's a fantastic example where you don't know from what places you can actually collect data, and fishing was one of those. So definitely a great example there. Thanks for sharing that. That also,
Yeah.
I know for a fact dbWatch kind of does a lot around database and database farm management too. So wanted to, obviously get your thoughts in terms of what, according to you, are the difference between database farm management and database instance management. How does that work?
Instance management is what we did back 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's when we had in-house, you had one or two or three or four big database servers, which was very expensive. It ran on the most expensive, powerful hardware you had. And you had dedicated people who spent their entire career just optimizing performance on these beasts,
Right.
because you had to squeeze every last drop of performance out of them, because it was not very impressive. I still remember when, was it a Sybase? We got 25 transactions per second out of it.
Oh.
Today, that is nothing.
Yeah,
A Raspberry Pi can do better today.
true.
Uh, but that's instance management. You focus on an instance and you try to squeeze the most out of it. And you try to keep it running and you caring for it and cuddling it. Today, customers don't have one or two or 10. They have 50 or 500 or thousands of instances.
Right.
And you can't cuddle each one. You need to manage all of them because you have so many of them, and it has to be efficient. You want to spend as little as time as possible on each individual. You want to optimize the resources to make sure you allocate resources, be it disk, memory, IO, where it is most needed. You want to just keep everything up and running because your task is going to be making the data available to the
Right.
users. And you're going to be less worried about the platform. You're going to be worrying about availability, resource utilization, access control, those things, rather than maximizing performance on any individual instance.
Right.
Yeah,
That definitely is interesting. Yeah.
yeah. So the farm management is about looking at all your database service, being whether it's Oracle, a SQL Server, or something up in AWS or Azure or MongoDBs, whatever they are, but
Mm-hmm.
just to make them available and to make sure you're managing them as efficiently as possible. Typically, you get more and more instances to manage, but you don't get more DBAs. So you just got to get more and more efficient.
Hmm.
And since we are people, we make mistakes. So the more you can automate all this, the better. That's farm management for me, as opposed to instance management.
Interesting. And if you talk about, obviously this is more on the side where you are obviously talking about a solution, but what about the problems? What are, the problems that database farm management actually solves?
One of them, DBA productivity. You need to, DBAs needs to be able to manage more and more instances to keep up with the
Mm-hmm.
growth you see in a lot of businesses. So obviously we need to make tools that makes the DBA more productive, more efficient. So he can monitor and manage a lot more without more effort. So it's all about automating all the basic stuff, all the routine, boring stuff like monitoring and checking status and health and these things. Very, very important. The other one is to reduce the tool load on a DBA. Today, if you usually have one set of tools per platform. I mean, Oracle have all these tools, SQL Server have these tools. And if you're going to be a DBA with multiple platforms, there are so many tools you need. That
Right.
is expensive. It is time consuming to learn, time consuming to manage. With tools like dbWatch, you can have one tool where you just put in all your platforms and they all, most 80% of all management is the same across platforms because they're all integrated in the same tool. Makes life a lot easier. It makes it
Mm-hmm.
less to learn, and one DBA can manage multiple platforms, as opposed to today where you have a lot of silo thinking in operations, where you have the Oracle experts and you have the SQL Server experts and you have the MongoDB experts, and they don't talk to each other. They're in
Right.
separate groups and they're sometimes in separate locations. For us, it's more like they're all data sources. So if you're a DBA, you should be able to manage them all. You shouldn't just be an Oracle expert. Yeah.
True. I think that
So,
definitely makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also the database farms, big server farms, like if you have 1,500 instances with 4 or 5 different platforms, it's a very big, complex operations. And if we can take some of that complexity out of operations, it leaves more time for the DBAs to do more meaningful things like deploying new instances, like optimizing, like making data more available, ETL, all those millions of things they have to do anyway.
Yeah.
So we're not making them redundant. We're just trying to give them more time to do the more valuable stuff.
Yeah. That is amazing. Interesting. We have a few questions that definitely I would love to take from Dak, Shruti, and also there are folks who have joined us in out there typing hashtag dbWatch. For the folks who've just joined us, wanted to just let you know that you have a chance to win $100 Amazon voucher. You just need to go in the link above and download the dbWatch Control Center evaluation. Using that link, you will register for it. You can also type in hashtag dbWatch in the chat so we know you are participating. Okay, we'll take those questions, but before that, obviously, I wanted to talk a little more about, since you were talking around DBA, so I wanted to learn more about the role of a DBA change in the future. How do you look at that, Andreas?
As I mentioned, with farm management is more about managing all the instances rather than just one handful or a particular platform. So the DBA will be, instead of a platform guru, so to speak, he will be more of a data engineer, data manager. He will manage a multitude of databases. Also because there's new platforms coming all the time. There's more and more NoSQL platforms coming. There is more and more variations of open source and other platforms up in AWS and Azure coming.
Right.
And they're all slightly different from a management perspective. From a pure application perspective, a SQL Server is a SQL Server. But from a management perspective, they are a little bit different whether they are on-premise or up in the cloud. And the same with versions of MySQL and so on up in AWS. So so for this reason, for a DBA, he has to know more and more platforms and variations of platforms. So he's becoming more a data manager than a guru on one particular platform, I think. That's going to make him more useful, and it's going to make him more flexible in the future. So he will also start focusing then on the making data available in the organization, because you should know all the data sources you have, all the platforms and so on. And it's about making it available, and it's all about resource optimization. I mean, these things are expensive. It costs a ton of money to run hundreds and thousands of database servers, big numbers. So resource utilization is important to manage the cost here. Yeah. And that's across the platforms. Doesn't matter where you from this and that platform. You just want to make sure you allocate the resources optimally across the whole farm. So I think we're going to see the strong silos again between Oracle and SQL Server and all these. They're not going to vanish completely. I mean, you will have your favorite platforms, just like a programmer have the favorite programming languages and so on. But they will be just like most programmers today. They can handle multiple languages. They're not stuck to just one. And I say you will see DBAs can handle multiple platforms. They're not going to be stuck just on a single platform.
Right.
And also you do see a lot of migration between platforms, as you know. I shall get into details, but the world is changing. So I think the DBA goes more to the data manager, data engineer side. He has to get a little bit higher in the food chain, because we're going to automate the basic monitoring. Things get more stable. They don't need to be hand monitored and fed as much as they used to be in the old days. But the numbers are exploding, so the workload is up, but the individual care and maintenance effort is going down on each instance.
Right.
So I think that's the way that the DBA is going. They're just going to get more and more important, but they're not going to be just sitting there optimizing single instances all day. It's not that often you will need that kind of expertise.
Okay, that is very valuable information. Thanks for sharing that, Andreas. Yeah.
Of course, there's going to be, I mean, you will always have one single instance somewhere, be in an e-commerce site or something that really needs a lot of hand tuning, but that's one or two out of the hundreds or thousands of instances you have.
Awesome. Okay. I would actually, obviously, I have a follow-up question, but let's take a few questions from the audience here. Daksh has a technical question. He's asking about what is the difference between the intention and extension in a database, which is more of a technical one.
Intention. That's actually a word I've never seen before. Extension, yes, but intention is.
So maybe we can explore about the extension bit.
Yeah. Extension in a database. This is getting on the technical side.
Yeah.
I think I'll give it a pass, this one.
Okay, no worries. Yeah. We can always you can always get back and answer these questions in the chat later, Andreas. So you can give a detailed answer there. But also another question from Shruti was, can you tell us more about dbWatch? How dbWatch is tackling database issues?
Absolutely. dbWatch in our product, we try to do as much as we can, and we may take it as simple as that. So we monitor instances. We have a lot of jobs we run on each instance to collect information about performance, health, status, everything. When we see an issue, it's all about visualizing it to the DBAs as soon as possible. It's about alerting them. We have a very powerful alerting mechanism, so we can send the alert to whoever you want at whatever time of day. We can, so like in the morning you send it here, in the afternoon you send it there, in the weekends you send it this way, to make sure it reaches the right person at the right time. And you can really configure what should be just logged, what should be alerted, what should be sent as alarms, because too many alarms are as bad as too few. It's a whole science about what do you really need to notify somebody about. Okay. But once we discover them, we try to let you drill down and analyze the issue. But we will not guess what's the best solution. We still believe that the DBA is the smartest and best person to decide what to do about an issue. But we provide you with as much information as possible so you can make the right decision. It's very dangerous to make automated decisions with data. We make the wrong decisions and you can do some terrible things. So we still think the DBA is the person to make a decision. We shouldn't take it for them. But of course, you can make some very simple decisions like auto-extending if you're running out of disk space or things like this. And we also have some routines to go and collect memory. I mean, if you have over-allocated memory to an instance, you can just take it down. When it goes hit the top again, you can increase it. A few simple things like that you can do. But for the more complex issues, we still believe you need the DBA in the loop to make the decision. But once you make the decision, we will give you the tools to take the action there and then. So in monitoring, you drill down, analyze the issue, and when you see the solution, you can implement it there and then, because dbWatch is not only monitoring an analytical tool, it's also a management tool. So you could, is it reconfiguration or start-stop or whatever you need to do, you can do it there and then without getting onto another console, logging into whatever instance and fix it. So you just stay in the same view to monitor, to analyze, and to fix.
Okay, that's amazing. And I'm sure that answers Shruti's questions. Thanks, Shruti, for our amazing question here. Okay, also, in terms of getting back to obviously more into data science, I wanted to obviously get your thoughts on how do you see humans benefiting from data science in the coming years, actually.
In the big picture, I see with data analytics, with all IoT, with collecting sensor data, environmental data. This is one of my favorite topics. Is the more we collect, the more we can analyze, the more we can understand about our environment and how things that we today consider unconnected or unrelated data points, actually, we will find connections in the future. We will understand our environment more.
Yeah.
And through that, we can make more intelligent decisions. And I think that eventually it's going to help us build a safer, cleaner, better world in the future.
Fantastic. And I agree.
Yeah.
Couldn't have compiled the answer better. Thanks, Andres, for that answer. Okay. Also, quickly wanted to take this question. Though there was a follow-up question on dbWatch. Kelina wanted to know if there's a version available for Mac.
Yes and no. Our Enterprise Manager product runs on Mac.
Okay.
The dbWatch server. For Control Center, we're not sure whether we're going to make it available on Mac or not. It's simply a question of demand, really. But we can compile it down to any platform. It runs on Windows today, and it's going to be soon on Linux. And if there's demand, we'll make it for Mac as well. For the client side, the consoles and the monitors, that's Java clients, so they will run everywhere, of course, on any kind of client.
Okay, amazing. All right, taking another question from the audience. What are the best practices to avoid data redundancy?
That is a timeless question. We've
Yeah,
always been
right.
struggling with how to avoid data redundancy. It's as early as you can try to catch redundant data, because the longer you leave it, the more of a mess, the more of a pain, and the less you really want to touch it.
Very true.
So, do design your data capture in an intelligent manner, because once you captured it, you want to avoid touching it until you need it. So I know a lot of people just, let's just grab all the data, and if you just do that and leave it, then nobody really wants to come after you and clean it up and avoid it, clean out the redundant data.
Very
So,
true.
use a little bit of time designing what to capture and where before. That's my advice.
Fantastic. Nice question from Aditi there. Okay, since we are talking here about data, obviously I had a question around what do you think are the best practices for scalable and efficient data pipelines?
I'm a big fan of keeping things simple and short. My experience with long workflows and pipelines is you're just building problems. The longer, the more chances, not that any chance that they will go wrong, it actually will go wrong. I promise you. So if possible, rather than to have one really long pipeline, break it down into multiple, keep it sweet and short. The shorter, the better, because it's long tool chains are extremely hard to configure and maintain. And they're very, very accident prone.
Yep. Okay. So Andreas, I have another question for you in terms of more on the side of the tools. According to you, what are the best tools to be used in data science? I know it's a broad question, but still
It's
wanted
pro.
to see your thoughts.
I don't think there is any best tools. I think
Yeah.
there's many good tools. Um, from my side, I mean, we do a lot of our customers are very Microsoft centric, and Power BI is obviously the first that comes to mind.
Hmm.
Um, but then there are so many tools, and you use the tools that you like. Those are the ones that are going to be the best results. I don't believe in standardizing too much. I think you should. I mean, I come from the programmer side, and the tools you like are the tools you're going to be most comfortable with. Is the tools that's going to give you the best results.
Right.
If I try to force you to use something online, but for me, Power BI, MATLAB, Mongo is sort of fairly standard tools to grab for a lot of tasks.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, and obviously answers my question. And
yeah.
definitely just wanted to remind folks that you have a chance to win $100 Amazon voucher if you download go and register in the above link. All right. A quick question from the audience that I can see from Mavic Investra. It says, what are the various types of relations in databases?
In relational databases, you have one-to-one, one-to-many, many-to-many. It's all very standard. That is SQL 101.
Yeah.
Um, very basic.
True. Okay. I think that definitely answers for Marvir. So, wanted to obviously jump more into the depth of data and wanted to understand like what is the best way to consolidate data according to you? How do you look at that?
Um, consolidating data. We do in dbWatch. We consolidate data about data. We collect a lot of information about database servers, and it's all about what's happening now. We need in great detail. What happened yesterday, we need in less detail, and so on. So
Yeah.
historically, as time goes on, you can consolidate more and aggregate them more and more. But I think at some point there is diminishing returns on consolidating data. I think you can do some things are easy. There's some quick wins and low hanging fruits you can do. But then as you've done the easy things, it gets quite expensive in terms of time and money to consolidate further. And probably it's just cheaper just to leave it.
Yeah.
It's just like old backups, instead of figuring out what you need and you don't need, just keep them all. Storing data is cheap these days. So
So
unless
true.
you're absolutely desperate for space, don't bother to consolidate too much. Do the quick wins and then leave it. That's my philosophy.
I think that's very helpful philosophy. Just go for the quick wins and you'll be there. So does make a lot of sense. Also, I wanted to quickly touch on about dbWatch. I'm sure the audience watching us would want to know more about dbWatch and what's in the future for dbWatch. So if I'm sure we were talking about something, so I'm sure the audience would love to know more about it as well, Andreas.
Okay, that's two questions. One, what we are, it's
Yeah.
dbWatch. We've been around since 2001. We started in Oslo, Norway by, would you believe, an astrophysicist who was moonlighting as an Oracle DBA He wanted to look at the stars, but he had to manage Oracle to pay for his studies and family. And he just found out that the Oracle standard tools were just too messy and complicated. So he started building his own tools. That's how it started, like a lot of
Wow.
companies in this space. But unlike a lot of others, we quickly decided that monitoring is not enough. We're not only monitoring Oracle, we got to monitor SQL Server and other platforms. So we started building a cross-platform tools.
Right.
And we found our audience very early on in large government, healthcare, health institutions, finance, government, and service providers. So we always been working with large customers, from very early on, we had customers with 50 and hundreds, and now 500, many hundreds and thousands.
Wow.
I think the largest customers are in the multiple thousands size. We also work with police and military institutions, so we got and healthcare, so we got security pretty well sorted out.
Okay.
Also because we provide management features. So if you're allowed to go in and manage the instance, we need to control who you are.
True.
And so we focused a lot on security in all aspects. And we're going to be bringing out more tools on the security side, because all our large customers, they have to let outside experts in from time to time to help them implement or fix problems or whatever. And it's a nightmare setting up VPN connections or TeamViewer connections everywhere. And we are building secure connections for outside consultants to make it easier to manage them and to handle them in a secure, controlled fashion. So that's one space to watch for what we're going to be bringing out in the future, probably toward the end of this year. The other things we're doing is, for a long time, we had an internal or had a feature in the product, which we call a SQL worksheet, where you can put in SQL queries and it will query across any number of instances across your farm. So if you forget, where is the table? This table, which server did I put it? You can just query, and it will query all your instances, and the answer will pop up from whichever instances actually has it, for instance.
Yeah.
And then we have extended that lately. It started a few years ago, and today is a standard feature in the product. It's not documented very well, so we're using it internally to put up a lot of the dashboards. But that is what we call the farm data language. It's a query language where you can query across a number of instances across platforms. So you can query Oracle, SQL Server, MySQL in parallel.
Right.
Even more exciting, you can query data files, flat files, web pages, SSH connections. You can query almost anything, anywhere. And you can query from anywhere, and you can store it anywhere. So it's also more or less a very fancy ETL solution. It's a very powerful query language. And it also has built-in features to display the results graphically or in many ways. You can put in functions, and it's compatible, for instance, with you can connect it up with JavaScript. So it's a very powerful solution. We use it for all our dashboards. Fast, powerful query language.
Amazing.
We need to put in some good documentation so everybody can see how to use it. So that will be coming.
Definitely, Andres. And what I'll do is, what I've done is obviously share the dbWatch website where they can actually learn more about the database monitoring and how dbWatch is actually looking after the database management as well. So they can always go in there, learn more about it, learn from the blogs that you guys have around the dbWatch control center and all of those. So it kind of answers a lot of questions for our audience. So yeah, these were great insights. So thanks for that, Andres. Also, I think this has been already answered by you. Does dbWatch supports cross-platform, which you obviously mentioned? Yes.
Yes, Oracle SQL Server, MySQL, MariaDB,
Yeah.
Postgres, Sybase, almost any version, whether it's on-premise or in the cloud. And
Okay.
there's more to come.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Amazing. Okay, let's take one last question from the audience that I can see is from Kate. Does dbWatch tell one when last a table was used? I find that data science generates lost of redundant aggregated tables. What is the best way to clean these tables?
I think as the Kate is indicating, when it was last used, you look on the access log, and when it's getting old, just clean them out. Yes, you can find the access on tables in dbWatch.
Okay.
It's fully possible. It's actually one of the things you can use FDL to as well as the farm data language, is to
Yeah.
make a custom dashboard for that, and it will just show you all the tables and access times. Not that difficult to do if you look into the documentation.
Okay, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Answers for Kate. Amazing. So my last question to you, Andres, is if folks want to get in touch with you, if they want to learn more about dbWatch, what's the best place to reach out to you or the team?
Me, you can reach on Andreas at dbwatch.com on email. I'm pretty
Okay.
old school. That's where I'm always checking, and I always answer. If you're lucky, you can also catch me on Twitter or LinkedIn. I don't check that quite as often as email.
Okay,
I'm very
that's amazing.
But for checking out the product, of course, you can go and see on our web pages. There's a ton of videos and blogs explaining all kinds of features and functionalities of our products and how to do things. So feel free to check them out.
Yeah,
There's a
definitely.
ton of
So
useful information there.
yeah, this is what the website looks like,
Yeah.
dbwatch.com. You can visit here, and like
If you go
Andres
to
mentioned.
support and getting started, that's where you find a lot of things.
Wow. So there are video resources.
Yeah.
There's a lot around dbWatch.
Yeah.
Okay. This is amazing. I'm sure this will help a lot of folks. I've already shared the link with everyone in the chat, so feel free to check this out. And thank you very much, Andres. It was fun talking to you. There's so much valuable insights that you've shared in last 40 minutes. It was pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you, Ravit. It's been really exciting to be on the show with you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you everyone for joining us today. See you again.